Hey, nice to have you on the show. This is awesome. Thank you for your time.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. And you're one of the first interviews in my new studio. I actually made a little
Oh,
makeshift studio in my basement. So,
oh, good job. That's awesome.
not as cool as your space, though. So, let's
Well,
start with that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the experience of putting a studio in your home?
I think when I moved here, the idea was to find a home already with a studio in it, and, you can get that here in Nashville quite often. Unfortunately, I did not find that. I was searching at some houses in Mount Juliet, just in the outer eastern areas of Nashville area, and the east side. I was checking out some houses with studios. It just wasn't quite right with what I needed. And then, my engineer friend Greg Majors had suggested to me to find a house that I can build the studio the way I want it with the right specs. And so I found a house in Bellevue where I was able to have a certain room with high ceilings, good dimensions, and then like I could just find a contractor that builds home studios and have him build it out in a more custom made way, and that's what I did. So I was able to you know have that kind of fall together literally over the course of the year and a half after moving, and I've been continuing to build and add to it. But I was able to definitely get a great foundation for a studio the way I wanted it. And for drummers, you want to have a nice big open room. And I also wanted to have a place where I wasn't completely focused on recording all the time and just having like all the isolated booths the way you want to have in a studio. I just wanted to have a nice, you know, um, renovated room for mainly rehearsals and recording drums and other instruments when needed, but more about the aesthetic pleasure of doing video shoots, any kind of, rehearsals for any level player or artist. Yeah, and it all kind of worked out. So, yeah, I'm really stoked. I'm really happy that it turned out.
And it proved to be a really good thing to have, considering the circumstances of
Oh,
what's
yeah,
going on with live music.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was like, it's like, my saving grace, I think, when it came to, definitely this time right now. It's a tough time. So,
For
I was
sure.
happy to be able to play and record for people and keep myself busy.
Yeah, I bet. So, talk a little bit about having everyone there a couple weeks ago. It must have been
Yeah,
nice to just all be together, but to be able to host everybody there must have been a really awesome feeling.
yeah, it was amazing. It was great to have everyone finally at the place all at once. I mean, I've had a couple guys from the band over, individually and stuff, but I haven't had everyone all together. And obviously, the studio was also built with the intention to have everyone over to do projects or streams or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it was finally, you know, the day had come and that week had come, and I'm very happy that it worked out. Yeah,
Yeah, we are too, for sure. It was really nice to watch you guys all play together.
yeah. Thanks. It was great. Yeah,
And Kick the Cat's been doing a bunch of stuff there too, and just in general. So, talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing and what you guys are doing moving forward in 2021.
yeah, for sure. So, Kick the Cat has reunited. It was a band that I had started with as far back as my college days at Elmhurst College, and joined up with Kris I, who was my college mate at the time, who's an incredible guitar player. Even then, he was, and he asked me to join this band, Kick the Cat, and that was back in '97. And I joined, and we worked on some low budget recordings, and we did a few things here and there, video sessions, some local gigs in Chicago, and then we eventually, started playing at like Martyrs. We played at places prior to that, like that don't really exist anymore. There was a place called the Lions Den we used to play, which used to be located off of Irving Park, Lincoln, and Damon. which is in the city in the north side for all the Chicagoans out there. And yeah, we basically played any kind of club date we could, and some radio shows in college, campuses and stuff. And then I changed my path and went with Umphrey's McGee starting in 2003, and left Kick the Cat. And Tom Hipskin, who's a famous drummer, session player in Chicago, filled in for me from that point. And moving forward, I was, of course, touring with Umphrey's and still am. And basically I played on and off with the band, reuniting with them since 2010 or 12. And then we've been kind of working on music since then in the studio. And at that time, I had moved to LA for a little bit, and for a few years, and now I moved to Nashville. And we continue to record and work on things. And now we have finally put together a new album that's going to be released in June. And we decided to maybe get this going again. And so we're starting to work on new video content, and a new presence overall. So yeah, they've been my longtime friends too. I've been playing with those guys, with the Kick the Cat guys, since college, and just throughout my years. And they're like homies of mine, I've known them for a long time. So it's really serendipitous that we're doing this, back together.
It's got to be nice to revisit that. It's a different outfit too. You're playing different music, so it's got to be nice to kind of have another outlet.
Yes, it is. At least I'd like to think that, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Got to keep playing,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something non-music that you've been doing, you did the Tasty Tuesdays with Kris. So talk about the reason why you did those, and if that's something that you're gonna keep doing, and what you want to do in the future.
Tasty Tuesdays is just more or less a hobby of mine. I just enjoy cooking and trying to learn new recipes, and just even quick little bites and things like that. It doesn't have to be like a full-on recipe. And I don't by any means, call myself like not even an amateur level cook. I just do what I do and I enjoy it. It's for good, healthy living, and a good reminder of that to cook, while at home and during COVID, taking off the COVID-15 and all that stuff.
For sure.
So, I'm just trying to find ways to keep myself active with doing other non-musical things as well. Yeah, and it's just a quick thing, like a quick snippet of ideas to cook and put together these ingredients. It's not like I'm getting really in detail with it, I just send off to the world a new recipe that's quick and easy and good enough.
Nice. I like it. It's fun. It's a different side of you. I like it.
Yeah, it's my bachelor approach, of cooking.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, something else that you kind of got in the works too is your Goodnight Nurse production company. So talk about that. Publishing, yes. Talk about that and what you've got planned with that too.
Yeah, sure. This has been a long-term investment and something I've been enjoying. Just also another hobby, so if you will, but I am curating this music to put it together for the purpose of TV, film, and video games, if at all possible. And we have already done a few things. We've done a few particular cues and things for different entities. We did something for a Formula for Pirelli Racing. It's a Formula One racing company. And we actually had an advertisement for a promo ad for a 3D camera, 360-degree camera that was on the market for a while. We were supposed to be the main promo, but I think it got bought out by Drake at that time, and Drake ended up making his own music to it. But we have opportunities, and we've done things, and we just updated about 126 new samples of music just to put on our website. and I'm going to do an official launch soon. Soon, so stay tuned for that because it'll be all the greatest hits that everyone wants to hear. So no, it's great. I love it.
You've just got all sorts of different things happening.
Yeah, that's how we do here. We gotta keep chugging along. You know.
For sure. Got to keep yourself busy, and there's nothing wrong with it. It gives you, again, different ways to create.
Yeah, it does. It actually does give you different ways to create, different ways to approach, your craft. Because like music licensing is different. It's more about the score-based approach to making music without maybe a melody, perhaps, and just more about soundscapes or sound design. Make something very minimal. You hear just a really cool and modern kind of bass line going with a sequence that's made out of a drum beat production oriented thing. Something just real minimal, and it builds very slowly through a scene of a TV show. That's a that's definitely an art in itself, and it's good to shift gears and do that and get away from like the typical artist release where there's a song with a melody and solos and interplay between a band. Sometimes just playing music strictly for score or for any particular thing, from even a commercial to a movie or like a video game. It's very specific about the genre and the feel, and it's not always in musical terms. It's just more about production, and it's good to have that kind of um, skill as a drummer and even as a composer in general. I think it's really cool to hone in on that in your craft through doing stuff like that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, very cool. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about being a kid. Real quick, I know a lot of people know your basic information, but give us a little like cliff notes of, where you're from, your family, where you went to school, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Um, well, I was born in Elmhurst, Illinois, and I grew up. By age 3, we had moved. We lived in Elk Grove Village briefly when I was around 1 or 2 years old, and then by about age 3, I moved to Inverness, Illinois, which is a northwest suburb of Chicago near Palatine. Um, and I was there growing up throughout grade school and junior high and high school. Um, yeah, I went to Marion Jordan grade school, and that was in the 80s. And then I went to Plum Grove Junior High, and then I went to Fremd High School, and that was up until class of '95. And then from there, went to Elmhurst College, got a scholarship playing music. And back then, they didn't have jazz studies programs per se. They did have programs, but they weren't supported officially as an actual degree in schools. So you would just have to do either not even Bachelor of Arts of Music. You would just do either music business or music education. And I had to choose between those two, and music business was my choice, and took music business courses along with your gen eds and all that stuff. I wasn't really quick on the draw in terms of music business and my skills back then. But over time, I just kind of got the hands-on experience as a player and learning how to work with people with contracts and things like that. All the things that were important for an artist to learn anyway. And as long as I knew that, we were good. But I had to, do the degree, and then they eventually changed to Bachelor of Arts Music to being, available to someone who was not necessarily a music business person or a music education person. I was kind of in between, in playing and touring with the Elmhurst College Jazz Band, which was a very, very well-known and noteworthy big band and jazz band throughout most of the colleges. And it's directed by the Grammy Award-winning director Doug Beach, who's been a serious mentor of mine, since the early development of my jazz playing and my professional career. And to this day, I still seek advice from him and look up to him as one of the greatest educators in the industry for that. He taught me a lot of lessons, and from there I got a master's degree in jazz studies over at DePaul University. Again, jazz studies was finally offered to students by about 2000 that year, which was the time when things were just changing over from the old way, the old degrees to the new. And that program just began as I just finished undergrad. And so I jumped into that. Um, and, that was a 2-year program. During that time, I was playing weddings and local corporate parties, bar mitzvahs, jobbing sort of things, all throughout Chicago. Played in probably every hotel you can imagine in Chicago. Had to wear the tux, slept the drums on a cart through the kitchen from the loading dock, with the rats, and all that. So I learned a lot, just from doing that alone. And went from wearing a tux to joining a rock band, Umphrey's McGee, which happened in 2003. And the rest is history. So that's my history really with music and, yeah, growing up in a suburban environment where there was actually a lot of young players I grew up with that were really talented. I mean, it was the 90s in high school when I was starting to play more in battle of the bands. And I mean, I started as early as junior high with that, but then high school was playing basement shows and, VFW halls and doing punk rock shows, grunge shows, I was doing the hard rock thing, played professionally my first venue gig at the, what was the Gateway Theater, which became the Copernicus Theater on the north side of Chicago. I believe that's right. And then the Vic Theater I played when I was in high school. And back then it was still hair bands. This was right before grunge hit. So that was an interesting scene. And so I've been kind of around that neighborhood since 91, 92, where actually, we've been in our office headquarters since then. And so, yeah, that's been it for me. I've been learning a lot since then and just trying to keep on keeping on here with the rock, with Umphrey's and touring continuously over the decades.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So when did you start playing drums and what inspired you to start playing? Were your parents into music?
I started when I was 8. I started when I was 8 years old, and I basically, I couldn't. I got a drum set given to me by my Uncle Bill. Basically, I was unaware of how to play anything, so I just kind of went that route and just started listening to music on the radio and playing to the radio and playing to songs on a cassette tape or a record, a vinyl, just play it in my basement and then I would play to it. So I self-taught myself at age 8. For a few years I was playing, and I joined up with a local neighborhood friend, and we started a band at age 12 called Iron Triangle, which was yeah, that was my rock trio, hard rock.
That was your hard rock band name. I like it.
Yeah.
So hardcore.
Yeah, that was very old school. And that was the thing to say, iron something. Yeah. And basically, yeah, we did that. And and then, from there I was learning I got lessons. I started to take drum lessons at a local drum store at age 11 with Jim Strike, who was the owner of the famous drum store called the Drum Pad, which was in Palatine, Illinois. It was just very random that such a great store was available, in suburban Chicago. There weren't really much like it. To me, and this is kind of even before Guitar Centers and stuff started popping up. So you had access to good teachers and nice, good drum kits and, books and stuff like that to learn for education. And I learned how to read music and learn how to read what I was playing after a while through good teachers there. Jim was my first teacher, and then I worked with a guy named Brad Schluter, who really developed my chops and brought me up to another level that was pretty crucial for me, um, going into high school, learning the styles of music that was, cool to play at that time, and then like learning about the players at that time, which was a very explosive time in music. In the 90s, I found early 90s and mid 90s, there were a lot of great drummers doing anything from hard rock to grunge to funk to metal, and just all of that was embraced. And we would study up on it, write out the parts of certain sections and fills, and even listen a lot, and just expanded my knowledge through the drum pad. I mean, that was a huge, um, just launch pad for me, as a musician.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So that's
How
where I went from there. Yeah.
how do you think having those teachers in your life helped you be a teacher? Now you're doing the lessons virtually. So how do you think that's helped you do the lessons?
I just try to remember where I was at that age, and I think about the age groups of the people I work with and the levels of playing where they're at, and how they're retaining the information. First of all, how are they going to grasp this, and what are their interests? Because what's important first is, what do they enjoy doing? What do they want to learn? Most players I tend to get are more beginner to intermediate, and you have to just find that spark, that creative spark that they're willing to tap into, and figure out a way to get them motivated to play and practice on and work on the not so fun stuff. Like, for example, technical exercises, coordination exercises, things that build your muscle repetition as a drummer. And yeah, I started focusing on that, and I also learned a little bit going through my schoolings, with some music ed, not really the music education degree per se, but like teaching adjunct lessons while I was on faculty at Elmhurst College. For a brief moment, I was teaching preparatory students and learning how to like figure out how to cater to their curriculum and what they were doing. Some kids were trying to do it for school, learning music to learn for marching band or any of the school bands. Some of them were not in school band and just wanting to play in a drum set in a rock band. So I had it just depended on the situation. And I had to learn a lot of effective ways to make the, material not so dry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of part of it. And it's also not really, doing them justice to think that it's okay to just think it's always, enjoyable either. Like, if you really want to be disciplined and really want to get better, you have to do the things that, aren't really what you're doing live and enjoying on stage. You have to get those, you got to get prepped for that. You got to practice hard to make it easy when you get on stage. That's the idea.
For sure. You got to do the hard work behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my history with that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So name the first album that left an impact on your life.
First album. Oh, I'd say the very first was a record. I mean, my parents used to play records around, the house when I was really young, before I even knew what I was listening to, almost even before I knew how to speak. And I mean, the Police was probably the one that I heard the most, the Police albums. And it stuck with me the most because their music was it was great for a young kid to like bounce around and jump around to. It was just like really sunny and like poppy and very like energetic, and it had that reggae contingent in it, or the ska or punk contingent with pop music and Sting's vocals, and it worked great. It was very infectious to me. And then of course Beatles was like the whole world to everything, and that revolved around many generations of rock music, and they were such masters and such huge influencers on anybody at any genre, or even just as household music would be just playing. That most likely you were listening to Beatles or Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, all the classic rock legends. So I grew up listening to a lot of those albums, and even some of the popular records through the eras. I mean, in the late '70s, I remember faintly, hearing Fleetwood Mac, and being played, or Jackson Brown, which were all basically pop stars and with hits at that time. And then, towards the '80s, of course, the whole '80s era was huge. MTV. Once MTV hit, you were actually watching videos and being exposed to actual bands at that
Mm-hmm.
time, and that was a huge thing, part of my history. I mean, even like anyone from Huey Lewis to Michael Jackson, to Van Halen, and you were just
Mm-hmm.
seeing their videos and like, oh wow, this is pretty, this is pretty rad. So I got to check this out. You know.
For sure. For sure. And just the theatrics of some of those videos in the 80s too.
Yeah, absolutely. I
The
mean,
budget on some of those.
which makes it so bad it's good. It's like that makes it like actually a cult classic because of how bad it might have been. You
Oh,
might.
absolutely. I've watched some of those old ones with my 10-year-old daughter, and the look she gives me is like,
Yeah, is this a joke?
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before auto tune, before all that, the fancy production. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, this was real life, hon. So talk about what drummers influenced you growing up.
Well, other than the Police, drummer Stuart Copeland,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin's John Bonham, of course. Any drummer would tell you that. Um, I would say, you know, I really liked U2 growing up a lot. So Larry Mullen Jr. was actually a very good drummer, and I only mean actually because he does. The band doesn't always get recognized for the players per se. Maybe the Edge is the most um, well known, I'd say, because of his guitar tones being so groundbreaking and innovative. But as a drummer, he was very solid, Larry Mullen Jr. And he had a great look, as they say in Spinal Tap. Great look. So
I
no,
don't know an awful lot about him.
yeah. And then I grew up listening to you know just so many different drummers. Jeff Porcaro on all the '80s hits. Even like Toto. Steve Gadd was a drummer introduced to me from my teacher, Jim Strike, when I was 11, when I started needing to listen to more educated type tastes of players. And Steve Gadd is like the blueprint for a lot of legendary drummers, who's on like almost any '70s pop hit you've ever heard. Like, mainly like from artists like Paul Simon, um, from Steely Dan, and Carly Simon records. I mean, a lot of different type players were using him as a blueprint for a long time. He even played with the late Chick Corea, who just passed away.
Incredible.
Yeah, so I'd say those are the guys, and then um, I started listening to like I'm just thinking like any pop music drummer. I didn't really pay attention to the name of the drummer, but Zorro stuck out as one guy when I grew up listening to, who played for a lot of big names, and Prince was one of them, I believe. And you listen to these guys, you don't realize you're hearing them on the records too, So like, I believe he played on the Michael Jackson tune, Billie Jean. He's like the guy who played the groove.
Okay.
So you're exposed to a lot of hits and pop singles and stuff growing up, not
Mm-hmm.
realizing who the drummer is until you actually study them later.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do a little bit of that as well. Once I got more into drumming, trying to understand where all this was coming from.
For sure. I've only recently done that too, where I'll find out about someone, and then thankfully for Google, you find out that they were, a session player on this, or they were on this album, and you're like, oh wow, like I had no idea about this person
Yeah.
and all these things that they did.
And then you also get into music styles, and you learn from your friends, about certain guys. Like a buddy of mine who was way into Led Zeppelin also exposed me to Jimi Hendrix, and I listened to Mitch Mitchell through the exposure to Jimi Hendrix, which immediately caught on to me as this fiery, badass just sound of this rolling in rhythm, jazz and sort of rock idiom, combined with some of the elements of like the more straight ahead, like on the grid kind of beats. It was more like had a swagger to it that was like the attitude of rock that I was really digging at that time. Um, so yeah, Mitch Mitchell was a big influence too. And then, I mean, there's so many. I can go on and on and on,
Yeah.
but that was the beginning for me. And then I can't forget hard rock drummers. Alex Van Halen, by far, was probably the most influential in terms of hard rock bands for me to jump into that. And Tommy Aldridge was on a lot of records with Ozzy Osbourne, and I listened to a lot of Ozzy growing up too. Um, and of course, Metallica at that time was a development. Going into metal was not an uncommon thing.
Hmm.
So Lars Ulrich was an influence, and yeah, I mean it just goes on and on and on.
Oh yeah, for sure. So if you weren't in music, what do you think you would be doing?
I'm married to music for my whole life. Honestly, I have no
Yeah.
idea. I
Yeah.
have no idea, man. I mean, so I think that that's just really it for my answer. I don't think I could ever really
Not,
think of
yeah.
anything else I could be doing.
Yeah. It makes sense. If it's just what you're meant to do, then it's what you're meant to do. So let's talk about playing drums and singing at the same time. When did you start doing that?
Um, I started playing drums and singing when I was doing, and it wasn't really intentional. It just sort of happened because it was probably because we had a deadline with learning songs to play for like the local battle of the bands, at a junior high school auditorium. Um, and I had to do that at that time in my age, and I had to learn. The other guy couldn't sing certain things because it wasn't in his range, and I believe some of the songs were like Motley Crue songs, so they were really high in the vocal range, I believe. And so I had to learn those songs before I had puberty, and it worked out great. So I was like, I'm just gonna try this, and I'm gonna sing and play, and I just started from there, and it just kind of it clicked. I don't know how. It just naturally sort of I was able to sync up my limbs with what I was singing as well. And I just seemed to pick it up at a young age. And I just kind of stuck with it throughout my career, sang backgrounds for a lot of things throughout the hard rock bands I played with, and the grunge bands, and the punk bands, the ska bands. I would sing a lot of background vocals, maybe even leads on some things. I was in a punk ska band called the Scalawags in high school, and Greenhouse was another ska band after that. So I did a lot of things that involved vocals because they always needed background vocalists. I mean, not a lot of people were singing and playing their instruments growing up. So yeah, I just happened to be one of those token guys that had that package going on. So
That's pretty awesome. What do you think would be the hardest part? I mean, you seem to have it on lock, but what would be kind of the most difficult thing about singing and drumming at the same time?
I think the rhythms and the inflections that you want to, you know, properly sing through a note. When you sing, it's a lot of it has to do with your posture and your technique and how you build your diaphragm and your vocal muscles, and all of these mechanics have to be built in like a muscle. And you have to keep doing warm ups and learning the right technical things to do. And you can't be harsh on your voice at a certain point in your life, and you got to keep doing all the right things to build on that. And I guess I've just even to this day don't feel like I like have not perfection but like an even a very very high level performance of singing a part and playing it, because you a lot of excuse me as I'm coughing has a lot to do with air.
Makes
So
sense.
I'm like, you have to really build and have a lot of air in your chest before you sing parts, and you can really belt. You get like a full voice, and you have to learn the shape of how you should shape your mouth when you're singing. And I'm doing all of these mechanics while trying to play all these other mechanics in my hands and feet, and it's difficult to really do great with all of it at once.
Hmm.
So I'm still working on that, and even to this day, and that's going to be an ongoing thing. So I'd say the hardest thing is for drummers is error and hitting the note and the pitches really precise while you're singing or while you're playing, because you get winded too, which is why I sing a lot of and belt out the higher notes with Umphrey's a lot, because I was trying to sing the lower notes when in the earlier part of the career, and I couldn't because if I was singing low and I'm playing like this, you're hearing all that. I'm
Hmm.
moving around trying to like keep the pocket going and singing and shaking my voice because of my movement. So when I'm really belting higher notes, it's easier to do that because of the movement. And I
Makes
think for a
sense.
lot of drummers, that's the same deal. And then also keeping your positioning of the mic right. If it's right here and you can, find the right mic stand to be able to move it out of the way. And you could do headset, but we never went that route because I think it was just I think it had to do with picking up the drums too much. Maybe the quality of the headsets weren't the greatest. So you just have to learn all those things, the things that other than singing,
Yeah.
make it all work. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. So what is one of your favorite songs that you like to play and sing at the same time?
I like to sing any police songs, to be honest, because I feel very natural with it. Um, but I like
I would
singing.
agree with that.
What's that?
I said I would agree with that. I like it when you sing
Yeah,
police songs.
yeah, it would be nice to do more of that. But also like, um, I mean, I like doing Van Halen too. It's fun. I love getting my Diamond Dave on, David Lee Roth. One of the best showmans. In hard rock history. He's my favorite. Just has the attitude. He may not have been the greatest singer, but he had more of the attitude and singing with that kind of you know attitude, or what's the word,
The
charisma.
confidence too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
really fun. um, I mean, there's so many different types of artists I've been fortunate enough to try to cover and sing, and I'd like to say I've done a pretty good job of all of it. I've failed at some of which I won't mention, but that's how it goes. It's hit or miss. And you never know unless you try, and
Exactly.
try not to pay attention to the haters or the trolls.
Absolutely. Because even if you crush it, there's still going to be haters and trolls. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's life. Such is life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes balls to even give it a shot in front of a whole bunch of people that are recording it and listening to it back. So,
Yes, you're here.
so you do impressions, and I've had some
Uh,
people ask
oh,
me to ask you.
no, not
You
doing
don't
any.
have to do any. Don't do any. It's okay. But I just want to know when you started doing them and if, like acting and theater was something that you were into when you were a kid.
I never did any acting or theater when I was a kid, but I just love movies. I grew up a movie buff. I just love scenes from a movie and sort of just depicting them and trying to act them out. I was just a goofball, just like any other drummer. Just acting out my goofiness by doing impressions. And I also grew up with a bunch of goofballs, in my neighborhood who were that way as well. One particular guy I grew up with who was just always imitating and just being a character himself and just being always like energetic in that sort of vein. Just being himself alone was, and I always was around that energy growing up, a bunch of smartasses. So like, I guess, doing impressions was my way of being a jokester or a goofball, you know.
Yeah.
And I was good at it. I just learned how to pick up on it watching SNL too growing up in the 80s. The
Oh,
casts
yeah.
between the 80s and 90s were like some of the best casts ever in Saturday Night Live. And um, seeing all of those guys do different characters and remembering those skits, that was a big influence on me as a person. So I've always kept that part of me always there. And it's fun to break the ice with an impression here and there. Unfortunately, um, I'm very shy about it. I'm very, uh, what is it? I'm a method actor. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's my excuse, I guess. But yeah, I do impressions when the
Yeah.
time is right.
Yeah, it's got to be spontaneous and authentic.
it's just that just works for me. It's hard for me to do it on the spot. And most of my impressions are ones that like many people do anyway. So I'm sure someone else will be like, oh, I can do that better, or I know someone who can do it better. I just do it for me and do it for fun. Yeah.
So what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever gotten about being a touring musician?
I mean, I can't remember one single greatest piece of advice. It's you remember more stories and things people say, maybe legendary artists you worked with, like just random stories. As far as the things people, like as far as suggestions or tips, I mean, I'm quoting Red Fox, who's an actor actually, who once told my old uh, mentor, who's a great sax player who passed away, Mark Colby. He told me a story when Red Fox was one time behind the curtain with him, and he goes, "No matter what you do, when you're in the music business, you gotta watch your ass," which means you just gotta basically be always looking behind your back and make sure you understand and know the business, know how to take care of your funds, not take responsibilities. Don't be complacent in any way, like, or take anything for granted. Just watch your ass. All the moves that you do. I guess that's the one most basic thing that sticks to me. And then also, I would say, I think that there's a lot of artists who don't say this, but they imply the message is to dare to be different. I think that a lot of older legendary acts like Umphrey's McGee, because of that, we are an eclectic bunch of guys with eclectic mixes of influences and ideas. We didn't come together to make and mesh to be this one style or a particular genre. We are a hybrid of things. We are the greater sum of all parts, and it works. There's something special there, and we were able to make a career out of it, a successful career with amazing fans and a fan base that's been with us for so long. And all of it was because we took the chance to do things our way, no matter how confusing or different it might have been to other people, to make those styles mesh. And we stuck with it, and I'm grateful to be different. Sometimes you hit, it's easy in this industry to, like, hit a wall with, once in a while, and just be like, what am I doing? Like, why can't we get a Grammy? Why can't we get a, this or that awards, or some kind of recognition, because, certain things weigh us down. There's a crutch, that's a label that's not doing us justice, meaning a genre label of what we do, that's literally so, like, narrow-minded in its scope, or just small compared to what we're really got going on. And so you can't really classify what we do. And I was frustrated with that for a long time. I admit that I was frustrated with that, and didn't know if we needed to identify ourselves or define it more as I was younger. But I realized over time how grateful I was, because legendary artists we would sit in or play with would take the time to tell us, you guys are doing it the right way, because you didn't have to deal with all this other bullshit of the music industry that I dealt with, or we dealt with, or whoever dealt with. And I don't take that for granted. So I'd say daring to be different to younger artists is really the biggest key and the biggest advice I ever got from anybody for us. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's incredible. So what music are you currently listening to?
Currently,
Yeah.
I've been working on a jazz set list for a gig that I'm doing in pretty soon in Colorado, in Denver, and I've been listening to a lot of contemporary jazz artists. There's a composer named Kris Myers who did an amazing couple of compositions with who works with Mark Juliana and that quartet. Mark Juliana is an amazing, award-winning, and just groundbreaking modern jazz drummer, and also just a beyond jazz, just like a conceptual, master. He played in David Bowie's last band too. I believe. Um, Black Star, that album, he's on that one. So like, I've been listening to that. I've been listening to random, you know, artists. Anything from like the Tame Impala era, like of most recent bands. I've been trying to dig into new stuff. Um, I mean, it's a tough question. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of different things at different times. Some days I'll listen to new house music, new drum and bass music, new uh, even the trap stuff. You know, the trap sort of esque style of music, break beats. And then I'll listen to Jason Isbell and folkier music, Sturgill Simpson or something like that. On other days, songwriters. Um, I mean, the list goes on. I have to. I'm actually coming out with some Spotify playlists. I'm going to release to the public of what I've been doing for the last year. That's been kind of a project of mine. So, you know, I've been putting a lot together there. Yeah.
That's sweet. That's awesome. I'm excited to check that out.
Mhm. Cool. Yeah. I mean,
So,
I mean, we just have to put playlists together for our day to just be our theme, you know, for that week.
for sure, for sure. We just have it playing. That's what we do. I'm homeschooling my kids, so we'll just have music on during the day and do some different stuff. It's interesting you brought up David Bowie too, because we're learning about David Bowie this week in school, and my daughter takes lessons with Joel, and
Oh,
he was
really?
just talking about that same album. He knew the bass player who played on that album, so it's really funny that you brought
Yeah.
that up too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a common thing. Um, I'm thinking of the artist right now in my search tab. Uh, you know, wow, I don't seem to see. I'm looking at my phone here for influences. But yeah, basically, I could tell you, you know, like I've been listening to some female artists a lot too, because I've been working with a couple female artists, like in recording on their records and trying to get, you know, so I've been listening to a lot of Billie Eilish, stuff like that, like more minimal. I've been listening to some more lo-fi kind of production skills and things, different lo-fi artists out there. That's kind of a thing now that's really, you know, kind of particularly popular right now. Um, Charles the First is this guy who does like more, you know, really like more down tempo, like kind of hip hop kind of beats, but it's more. It's hard to describe it, but it's like really amazing production, and I like his stuff. And you know, female artists, Solange, and just so many. Marion Hill, I like Marion Hill a lot. Um, but then I also try to listen to the classics. I mean, shit, I've been even listening to Tom Petty radio on XM radio on Sirius, and
Nice.
I'll listen to the radio station sometimes like that. I'll go between that and then like maybe you know uh, Alt Nation or something. Some of the newer alt pop stuff that wasn't. It only hits me to a certain surface. It's hard for me to relate to the newer stuff because I'm not taking anything away from the new artists, but the production is so perfect. It's a little too. It's a little too overly produced. You
Yeah.
know, like I feel like it's something that you would have to have all on a backing track if you played live. You have to
Yeah.
hit spacebar and play to it with a more watered down acoustic sound and play along with all these sounds. I mean, you could do that, and even plan to do that with some Kick the Cat stuff along the way, but you can do it in a way that it doesn't completely overshadow what you're doing live. And a lot of alt pop bands sound like that to me. They almost sound like they can almost literally just have so much back like 50-50 on the backing track and the live, you know. And that's too close to an equation for me to take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I'm always searching. I mean, there's even like the latest Tool album that came out, I believe, last year, and I'll always listen to Tool. They're always a big part of my darker side of hard rock and stuff. And their sounds are amazing. And Danny Carey is a big influence. of course, for most hard rock drummers and progressive rock drummers. So I listen to that. I listen to progressive metal, if you want to call it that or whatever. I mean, I'll go nuts and listen to Meshuggah for about a week, like nonstop. And I go on this head trip, listening to Meshuggah or other Scandinavian metal bands. And then I'll listen to, you know, there's a group called Intronaut, who I think is really badass, actually. And there's someone worth checking out if you like that kind of music. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on. I'm always searching for new music and old music as well.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. So what would you say is the greatest live show you've ever seen?
The greatest live show I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like asking what I would be doing if I wasn't playing music. Um, I mean, I've seen so many memorable shows. I would say if I had to choose one for all aesthetics considered and just experience all around, um, I saw Pink Floyd on the Division Bell tour, 1992, and at Soldier Field in Chicago. That was probably like a religious experience for me, and I'll never forget it. It was probably my most favorite concert experience I've ever had.
Oh, I bet.
Probably, probably that one for sure.
I bet.
I mean, I've seen Paul McCartney live, and I've loved it. I saw the Police live on their reunion tour at Wrigley Field, and it was 2010, was it? Or yeah, 9 or 10 or 11. Um, I saw Social Distortion and the Ramones together on the same bill at the Aragon Ballroom, Chicago, in 1992. That was a very memorable show.
Oh,
Actually,
I
that was
bet.
93. And I think the Melvins were on there as well. I saw them too. That was pretty badass. Nine Inch Nails, a lot of their shows are probably my favorite. But the one favorite is still Pink Floyd. Yeah.
Nice.
hmm
So what is something that you never go on tour without?
Um, Probably I mean, there's something I've managed to forget on all levels for a tour at one point or another. But my ice packs are probably the most important to me for after show.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about your post-show ritual. I've heard from people that have seen you after a show, you're just all ice up. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. That's what I do after shows. I ice down because, playing an Umphrey show is not like playing, ho hum pop songs.
Yeah.
It's like it's a full on acrobatic athletic event for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then to try to like have that energy, it's like, Neil Peart from Rush used to be like that too. He would come off the stage just completely sore to the bone, bruised, black and blue, sweating or drenched in sweat, just completely just drained of all of his energy in his life because he's putting literally his whole life, like force and soul, into it. That to me is what I at least adhere to. I try to strive for that, and I'm pretty tired. I'm probably more out of shape than Neil was, but because he used to ride his bike at a younger part of his career a lot, between tours. And I don't mean just his motorcycle. I mean he would ride he would like 10-speed ride race, like between cities, which I heard and I think it's true. And I mean, playing this gig, is like playing a Rush gig. You're doing a lot. If you just play straight ahead kind of beats, I mean, yeah, you can do that. Maybe it's even more appropriate for some things, but that's not what I do with this band because the music lends itself to more progressive elements, and I think it makes all the world of difference. So if I pull it off, I have to be able to do it night to night and take care of my body. So the best way to do that is to ice down after the show, just like any athlete would after a game.
Yeah. Makes sense. Especially when you're doing multi nights, you're doing like a 3-night run or something, you want to make sure that you're still able to play with that same energy on night 3.
Yeah. As long as we're playing Wizard Burial Ground, I'm gonna have to do that every other time. I'll have to ice down every night or whatever.
Well, you mentioned Rush, so let's talk about what it was like to pay tribute to Neil right after he passed. You guys debuted 2 songs that weekend, Anthem and Limelight, which I love when you sing Limelight, by the way. So great job on that. But talk about what it was like paying tribute to him and him being such an influence. So what was that like?
I mean, it was just exactly as it was. In fact, that was one of the guys I realized I never mentioned in my first influences for drummers. He was definitely one of them. I mean, he tends to appeal to drummers at a young age because his exuberance and his youthfulness and his approach to music literally catches you when your mind is literally like wide open and still unaffected by the world, and you're just, you have infinite amount of ideas and energy, and Rush is perfect for that, like for that energy and that vibe to capture someone to be progressive in their approach, and Neil Peart represented a lot of that. He represented like, the art of playing orchestrally, having an orchestral approach to rock patterns and ideas and compositions. Treat the song as a composition, like through compose and everything, with an orchestral percussion element to it. He had all those bells and whistles, and he would use them. He would use them exactly on cue and through compose and everything. He would play with multiple rack toms, multiple floor toms, multiple cymbals. But he did it in a way that wasn't about show. It was literally what he was using for each part of every song. Mm-hmm. And I learned that probably through him more than any other drummer, that you could do that possibility. And so when I was young, or like 11 years old, 12 years old, it was infectious to me to listen to him, and I would listen to his music regularly. I had older friends and a bandmate whose older brother was a great drummer in town and in the Palatine area, and he would play Rush tunes, and then I would be like, "What's that?" And he would show me a couple things, or I would listen to him play with his band. So, the older generation guys too it's one of those bands that would be passed on to the younger generations, and that's what Neil represents, I think, for drummers. He's one of those icons in rock drumming history. He's literally in the top 5, perhaps, most likely, and that was it for me. I mean, ever since then, I followed their tours and watched. I went to their shows throughout most of my life. Made sure I caught them, for all of their tours, and I managed to catch the very last show they ever played. I believe was at the Forum in LA. Mm-hmm. And I was able to see that. It was amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. How lucky.
Yeah, it was great. That was probably one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we talked about the Police too, and you guys did the costume and the covers Halloween 2019. So talk about that. Was that your idea, or was it a group suggestion? And the ideas of the songs, was that everybody's suggestion?
It was actually Ryan's suggestion, if I recall. It was his idea to do police covers in police outfits.
Nice.
But obviously the cop outfits he wanted were the ones more modeled after the Reno 911 cops in shorts look, which is more comedic. It's very, are you surprised? I'm not surprised.
No, not surprised.
But it was fun. I enjoyed it. And of course we had to grow mustaches again because Ryan loves those packs. We got to grow mustaches for this tour or that tour, just to have an excuse to grow a mustache. So we did it, and it worked out great. I thought it was probably one of the smoothest Halloweens we ever had, because we've tried to tackle so many mashup compositions for so many years with mashup costumes and just madness. You know, you're just mashed up in your brain, you know, all for a week, and you're rehearsing like for hours, you know, for days, like hardcore rehearsals, and then the show, and you know, by the time it's over, you're just so exhausted. So I think we needed to find just a new direction and a new thing, and the police covers with in the police outfits, I thought was good. It was great. I
I
mean,
agree.
playing police songs is like what comes naturally for us because we all grew up listening to the police, so that worked out.
I agree. I was thrilled. I was hearing some rumors before that that's what you guys were going to do. And then when that's what actually happened, I was so
Mhm.
excited, especially that
Yeah,
synchronicity too. I was like, oh, I've wanted them to cover this song forever.
that's cool. That's cool that you know of that one. Yeah, I mean,
Oh, such a
yeah, it was
great
fun.
tune.
I thought we chose the right tunes.
I
So,
agree. I agree. Definitely. Of course, I have to talk about Phil Collins. Phil Collins was one of my parents in Genesis, my parents' favorite band and artist. So I was raised on them. So
cool.
were was Phil Collins an influence on you? And talk about that.
Sure. Phil Collins was definitely an influence on me. Absolutely. And not even really intentionally. Um, both unintentionally and intentionally. There were times where I was just finding myself hearing him on the radio in like the 80s, you know, his voice and his drumming. And that's becoming a part of you as you're growing up and listening to music. And that's stuck with you. So that when you think of ideas, it's coming from something. And that I definitely owe a great deal to Phil Collins for that. Um, then when I actually started paying attention to him as an artist and listening to him, I was introduced as a drummer in the drummer community, hearing compilations of little things, even on vinyl, like hearing him playing with Chester Thompson, who was a great drummer as well, with even Frank Zappa, and also worked with Phil Collins. Um, and they did a drum duet a couple times live together. So I would remember hearing some of those recordings, and then I would hear Phil playing just as his solo album, and then I heard him with Genesis on reunions and stuff. Didn't happen too often. Um, I don't even remember what years, but I did happen to see the Genesis reunion at the Chicago Stadium, United Center. Um, I can't remember what year, but yes, Phil Collins is a big influence. I mean, Peter Gabriel to me was a little bit more of an influence on me in terms of production. His drumming, the drumming on his solo albums stuck with me the most because during that time, Phil had moved into doing ballads, you know, and
Mhm.
writing more ballads and stuff like that after the '80s era, and uh, you know, Peter Gabriel was still doing literally just some monumental stuff, you know, bringing world music at a whole other level, like African rhythms of different tribes and regions and ethnic kind of percussion into his songwriting, and it was literally a staple for me. So Peter Gabriel was maybe a little more of an influence, but Phil Collins was most definitely an influence,
That's very cool.
especially as drummer singers. You know, go Phil is the guy. Everyone thinks of him
Yeah.
probably more than any drummer in history, which is kind of funny because there were a lot of drummer singers. I mean, Levon Helm was a fantastic singer, great singer, like
Hmm.
in American music, you know, but
Hmm.
played very simple beats, but played exactly what the song needed. It felt comfortable, felt right. Phil did the same thing, but he was more of that '80s, like just snappy, the slap of the drum. You can get that roomy sound, and just it was like you know it was almost like big Kahuna drums, just like boom 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 boom,
Oh
just
yeah.
like
Just this
just
massiveness.
like you're hearing like a 300-pound gorilla playing those grooves, you know.
For
And
sure.
he's singing, like slick Miami Vice esque kind of songs in slick Miami Vice esque outfits.
Definitely. Definitely. Although some people I saw were definitely talking about your jazzy shirts that you were wearing during the stream. So
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I knew that would pick up some commotion, for better or worse. Uh, First of all, it's not a Hawaiian shirt. To all my close friends who like to bust my chops, completely the opposite of a Hawaiian shirt. Um, and I like to, wear these shirts because they're comfortable. I can't wear long sleeve shirts too often, or even coats, or even like anything denim, because it's too thick of a material, and I sweat my ass off when I play. So
Yeah.
I'll be drenched. It's a
Yeah.
waste of time. So
Yeah, you
I
got to
gotta
be
wear something.
comfortable.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna wear like some athletic, North Face shirt or something like that. I don't need to, you got to wear some kind of stylish shirt, somehow.
For
So it's
sure.
tricky. But we just do what we can.
Nice. So talk about the opportunity of playing with Jason Bonham.
I mean, it's one for the ages. It's one for me that I'll be completely like, I'm completely grateful for it, for the rest of my life. I'm speechless even saying it. I can't even describe it.
Yeah, I
Um,
bet.
but what was so cool about it is it went seamlessly well because he's such a cool guy. He's so down to earth, Jason, and he immediately made us feel comfortable right away. He's cracking jokes. He's like everything that you would want to have in the qualities of a guest that you're collaborating with, or even just someone you're looking up to that you want to meet. Um, and that's exactly what I did. I looked up to him, and I still do. And I was very grateful to have played with him. Hopefully, we'll get to do it again.
Yeah.
Um, Playing with him is like playing with a rock giant or idol, like in the drumming chair, But he's also a team player and will work with you and work and really collaborate the right way. And he's developed quite a career of his own over the years, and people can't forget that. They always think of the name, of royalty, like his dad, and that he's not by any means in the shadow of his dad. He's doing his own thing, and
Hmm.
he's crushing it. He
Hmm.
plays with Sammy Hagar and a lot of other projects with various artists like that, and that band is killing. Sammy sounds amazing still. His voice is great, and these guys are still doing it. And Jason still has exactly the vintage and staple, John Bonham sound. He's basically the ghost of John Bonham when he wants to be, and I'm just grateful to have played next to him and have that energy when we did it.
Yeah.
The huge drums, the sounds of his Vista lights, and the kid is sounding just like you heard it on like The Song Remains the Same, the video, the live recordings, and it's just a trip. So,
Yeah.
but he's hilarious. He's a typical drummer. He likes fast cars, and you know, but he's a healthy guy these days, and he's an influence on me. I think we're Fitbit buddies on our Fitbit. So he'll hit me up and nudge me once in a while. Be like, notice I'm not doing enough steps because
Nice.
he's always crushing me every week apparently.
It's nice to have that motivation.
Yeah,
Accountability buddies are important.
yeah. So
Nice.
that was great. It was amazing to play with him.
I bet. I bet that was my only trip to Red Rocks was,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Really?
2019 when he played that set with you guys. So I was really glad that we were able to make that trip happen anyways, but especially to catch that set
Yeah,
because it was really
yeah.
awesome.
That was a good one. That was one of
Yeah.
my favorites. And James Dillon, the singer that's normally in his band, did a fantastic job. He just crushed it.
Yeah,
And
that
he's
was
also
incredible.
a very consummate gentleman and professional, and it was great to work with him.
Yeah. Awesome. So obviously I'm sure we brought up Zappa, of course, as an influence. So what was it like having Ike Willis sit in with you guys last February?
Oh, it's another one to check off the list, and you're just like it's like a dream of of cast of artists you grew up listening to, and now you're able to play with them. I mean, it's great. He's cool as hell. It's very cool. He would go with the way we would learn things because it's not always exactly how things would go with him with the way maybe the way he did it with Frank or the way Frank did it. Um, but we do our best, and in the spirit of it, he rolls with it, and he comes up there and just fits right in like one of the boys, you know. And that's the way it was with Ike. It was great.
That's
He's
awesome.
got all kinds of stories. He's hilarious, you know. He's still witty and charming, and really fun. Really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Ike was great.
Nice.
Mhm.
So who would you love to have sit in with Umphrey's?
A lot of different options. I've thought about that. I mean, honestly, I think more in these days, importantly, about what Humphreys is doing as a band. The originals we're playing, not the covers we're playing, not the artists that are sitting in. I know that the fans like that, but and will continue to do that.
Right.
But as an artist, personally in the band, I think more about our music and where we're going to go from here. How we're going to you know, keep doing our best to grow and keep, giving good music that we can produce for people. But if I had to think of that, I mean, it would be some, I don't know, it could be anybody. Like there's a few. I mean, I would like honestly to hear a great pop singer or somebody who's a songwriter who would fit the bill with us. I think well, and is an amazing guitar player, and it would work great with all. I think everybody all around. I think John Mayer would be a great choice for sit-in. I would be completely blown away by that. So uh, that would be amazing. Maybe of course, anybody from from the jam world, like if I had to choose, and who are icons like Trey would be great. I mean, there's a lot of artists even in the hard rock world and grunge world. I'd love to have like maybe Dave Grohl,
Yeah.
um, Tom Morello, who's become a friend through charity works and stuff. We've worked together. I'd like to have him sit in with us, and we don't have to do a rage tune. We can do something else. Um, I've I've found it was really fun to have Jimmy Chamberlain when he sat in with us with the Pumpkins from the Pumpkins,
Hmm.
and that was a fun experience. So I don't know. I mean, I think those are some names to start with.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So talk about playing with Marcus Rezak. When did you guys start collaborating together? And I believe you guys are doing something in Denver soon.
Yeah, we're playing at Cervantes on March the 12th, and yeah, it's going to be a fun week. We're working on some new music and new ones and old ones, some classics.
Nice.
The Mark Rezak classics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what is a favorite Umphrey's memory?
Um, favorite memory? I mean, there's so many. Probably playing some I think playing Abbey Road, honestly, was a great memory. It was a full day. We did 10 songs in a row. We played for about 14 hours straight. It was ridiculous. But we didn't want to stop. We didn't want that moment to stop. I mean, we just were in awe, of being there. And it was good vibes. It was very serendipitous for us. So yeah, probably Abbey Road, and any of the particular Red Rock shows are always fun to remember. Um, Playing, I think Rothbury was one of my favorite shows I ever played, which became Electric Forest, and that was 2009. That
Hmm.
particular year was just something about something in the air. It was just some magic going on at that particular year for us, and for that festival. Those are
I've
probably some particular notables right there.
I've heard that about Rathbury though. I heard it's the forest though.
Oh yeah, of course everyone said that. I mean, it makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, the festival grounds in its own right are like, you know, it's really dense forest in the summer, so the air is really, feels clean and it's fresh. It feels like fresh feeling being in that on the festival grounds there, and things are so well done by you know, the event coordinators there and the artists. the people in the Burning Man community come together and do, work their magic and do their amazing, designs of anything from decor of lighting to, you know, unique stage setups or collages or even, you know, any kind of artistic sculptures and things. That's all a part of the whole experience. And that all is just makes for an amazing weekend, amazing place for shows.
For sure, for sure. So when you can finally start regularly playing shows again, what is a bucket list place that you would like to play with Umphrey's McGee?
I'd probably say the Gorge. We haven't played the Gorge yet. If we could ever play there someday,
You could
that would
definitely social distance there now. There's plenty of room for everybody.
maybe that will be our way in on it. I don't know. Um,
Maybe.
yeah, the Gorge would be amazing. Um, I mean, I'm sure I'm leaving out a bunch of other options and stuff, but yeah, I'd say that one for sure. That's definitely a one to go for.
For sure. All right. Well, I think that's everything. We went through so many questions. Thank you for humoring me and
Yeah.
answering everything.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Sarah. Yeah, I appreciate it. I hope that I got your questions answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else, maybe some other things that you have in the works that I didn't cover that you wanted to shout out or maybe mention?
I mean, not really. If anything, Kick the Cat, my newly found project, will be coming out with a new record in June. So stay tuned for that, as well as some singles coming up. And it's going to be an exciting new launch in the new year for that new project, a newly found one. So I'm just pushing on that one. So check it
Nice.
out. That's it.
Awesome.